Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in.
Notebooks in their hand. They're coming in, they're very alert, and I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of it.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And
Cassie Ventura on the witness stand for a fourth day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs's desires. I'm always ready to free.
The second Prince's voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. Everything changed. Diddy's poker face, gone. That tight grip on his image cracked the moment the late icon's final recording filled the room like a ghost speaking from the other side. What exactly did Prince say or sing that shook one of the most powerful men in music to his core? Day 3 of this wild trial just dropped a bombshell that no one was ready for. Hollywood insiders are scrambling, and the buzz in the industry is getting louder by the hour.
Prince's last Diddy recording played in trial.
At first, it all seemed routine, same chaos as before. Reporters elbowed their way to front row seats. A-list names slid through hidden entrances like shadows. Lawyers lined up their folders like it was any other day. But today, the air was heavy. You could feel something was about to go down. Security doubled up. 4 guards flanked Diddy's table, way more than the past 2 days. And they weren't just standing there, they were watching him, real close. A courtroom source spilled that new orders came in early that morning, but no one saying what for.
He said he would get physical. That one male guy who did things with Diddy and Cassie said he witnessed him get physical. Don, so again, we talked about how the domestic charges aren't, what he's being, what he's on trial for. But boy, it's stacking up. And I feel that the jury is going to take that into consideration.
Diddy didn't flinch, though, not at first. He pulled up in a crisp navy suit, all smiles and waves like he was stepping onto a red carpet. His crew formed a wall around him, whispering tight game plans. He looked calm, too calm. But while he was busy playing confident, the prosecution had something up their sleeve. 2 tech guys quietly rolled in fresh equipment, stuff that wasn't there before. No announcements, no warning, just silent setup for something big.
Like, she is out of the freak-off scene. She is, when she's with Kid Cudi, or allegedly with Michael B. Jordan, she's kind of out of the freak-offs if she wants to be. So why do you keep going back? Yeah. I know it's kind of like a mental, she still loves Diddy. Diddy was jealous about her.
Oh, yeah, because that was another thing that the prosecutors were trying to do, is show that, that they had a very jealous relationship. She would get jealous when he's with Kid Cudi. Also, Kim Porter, Cassie would be jealous of Kim Porter.
Right.
Techs were running quiet checks, nodding at the lead prosecutor, who couldn't stop eyeing Diddy like a storm was about to hit. You could feel it. Something heavy was coming. But only the prosecution knew what was locked and loaded. Word started buzzing fast. A courtroom reporter told me later that people were texting each other mid-hearing from across the room, asking, "What's about to drop?"
Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in.
The tension, unreal. When the judge finally walked in, he didn't jump into the usual script. Instead, he dropped a warning that turned heads. I want to remind everyone, no matter what gets presented today, you will keep your composure.
Diddy's team tried to do was show how they had breaks, and she was with Michael B. Jordan and was with Kid Cudi for a minute. But during that time period, she was still having freak-offs with Diddy, and I think that was them trying to show, this wasn't a controlling thing. Here she was, hooking up with other people. She just was into the freak-offs.
I kind of buy that, to be honest.
Then he paused, stared straight into the gallery, and added, "Any outbursts? You'll be removed immediately." Yeah, he knew something was up too. The prosecution kicked off as expected, calm, detailed, threading past witness stories together like a puzzle. Nothing new, right? Until suddenly, mid-sentence, the lead prosecutor stopped cold.
Listen, I mean, it's a lot of this stuff that I've heard and seen already. I'm really trying to connect the dots here and think damn, what if Prince was what if he caught wind of some, I'll just say allegedly, stuff that Diddy might have been doing that seems to be, I ain't talking about consensual things, I'm talking about illegal things or whatever. But I'm just would Diddy be that dumb to
Your Honor, she said, locking eyes with the bench, the prosecution would now like to submit a piece of critical audio evidence. Boom. She stepped forward, holding a sleek black device. She told the court it had just been authenticated by forensic experts. That's when the defense snapped. Diddy's lawyers shot up, shouting objections. This wasn't disclosed. The judge called them up for a sidebar. It got heated, arms waving, words flying. But after a few tense minutes, the judge turned back to the room and said, "The evidence was properly disclosed during discovery," the judge said firmly. "The prosecution may proceed."
Good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him to keep it going.
And just like that, it happened. The lead prosecutor faced the courtroom, voice steady but sharp. What you are about to hear is the final private recording made by Prince Rogers Nelson before his death. Boom. The whole courtroom froze. Journalists stopped mid-keystroke. You could literally hear the breath get sucked out of the room. Prince, yes, that Prince, was about to speak from the other side. The legend, the icon.
Not think that Prince, this celebrity, has cameras in his house as well. So I'm just trying to think, because if Prince has cameras and he's recording stuff, to get some dirt on Diddy, I don't know. I feel like Diddy, with all his cameras that he allegedly had, or no,
One of Diddy's attorneys gripped his arm fast, Diddy's face. It went pale instantly. You could almost see the blood drain from his skin. His whole legal team huddled in, whispering like their lives depended on it. Meanwhile, the prosecution moved in silence, hooking up their mystery device to the courtroom sound system. The moment before the audio played, the vibe shifted. You could feel it in your bones.
The freak-offs herself and was a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts that from 2009, I'm always ready to freak off. There was some other texts where she was referencing hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, yes, this doesn't look.
Diddy's squad looked shook. And from the way Diddy's eyes suddenly started darting, he knew exactly what was coming. Then came the real shocker. This recording was pulled from Prince's private vault, the prosecutor said. The courtroom burst into murmurs. Reporters leaned in, some already typing madly into their phones. This wasn't just evidence, this was a message from the grave.
Cassie Ventura on the witness stand for a fourth day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs's desires. "I'm always ready to freak off," one message said.
Cassie was into
The prosecutor continued. It was recorded just weeks before Prince's death in 2016. He never meant for it to go public. He made it as insurance, to document what he personally witnessed. When Prince's voice first came through the speakers, it didn't just echo, it hit. A woman sitting in the third row straight up covered her mouth and burst into tears. And it wasn't just the shock of hearing him, it was how he sounded. Prince's tone was low, shaky, almost like he was whispering in secret.
trying to show that, like, Cassie, you were in love with this guy. That's why you were jealous.
Right.
So, like, this was a real
It
relationship.
was just interesting to see Chris Brown.
I mean, he's always coming up somewhere, dude.
He is.
Chris Brown.
All right. Final story of the week. Final story of the week. Justin Bieber is not a victim of Diddy. So this was one of those, like, rumors or whatever that was flying around in the months leading up to the trial. And to be honest, there was quite a few...
Gone was the confident superstar. This was a man who felt cornered. "I'm making this recording because I don't know who to trust anymore." That's how Prince started it. His voice, crystal clear. You could hear every breath, every pause. This wasn't a performance. This was Prince stripped down, raw, scared, real. Then it took a turn that nobody was ready for. Prince started dropping names, dates, exact locations. And in the center of it all was Diddy.
Now, Ventura confirmed that she and Combs had conversations about a swingers lifestyle, but that the freak-offs, they were very different.
Yeah, so she talked about this idea where I guess Combs wanted her to watch him have sex with another woman. She said that happened 2 or 3 times, but that he mentioned it frequently.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And this is where they brought that up today when they brought up Kim Porter's name. The defense asked Cassie Ventura, "Are you jealous or were you jealous of Kim Porter?" And
he spoke about wild parties right at Diddy's homes in the Hamptons and Miami. And here's the kicker. 3 other witnesses had already testified about those same events. Now, Prince was confirming them from beyond the grave. I watched Diddy as the audio played. His usual cool, gone. His face dropped, eyes locked forward like he'd just seen a ghost. One of his lawyers leaned in to whisper, but Diddy didn't even blink. As the tape went on, Prince's tone turned urgent.
Rumors flying around, like, was there minors involved? Says if no other celebrity was part of freak-offs, why are they in hiding? Are they in hiding, though?
I don't think they're in hiding. I just think other celebrities didn't want to insert themselves. No one wants to be tied to Diddy one way or the other.
Even if you're at a white party, like just having a lot of fun at, one of Diddy's white parties, you don't want to be linked in any way.
No, and that's why, like, all those people, there's a few people I think that have come forward and been like,
What happens at these parties isn't just wrong, it's criminal, he said. I've seen how they move. I've seen who's involved. I've seen who gets hurt. Each sentence hit harder than the last. You could see it on Diddy. Every word landed like a punch. That recording, it didn't just shift the case, it shook the whole room. Prince didn't just back up what the prosecution claimed, he confirmed it in a way no one could dispute. You can't cross-examine a man who's no longer here. You can't bully him into switching up his story. This wasn't hearsay, this was insider truth, straight from the vault. He spoke about a specific party in December 2015, dropped names, real names, including 2 celebs who had previously denied ever being at Diddy's private events. That lie, dead on arrival,
what it is that they're going through. But I think that's something that you think about on both sides, you know, to look at Alex Fine, which is Cassie Ventura's husband, and think about him having to listen to all that's being said about the type of woman that Cassie Ventura was versus the person that's expecting, you know, their third child together now. So whether it's Combs's family or Ventura's family that's there to support her, her brother and her husband, Alex Fine, I think it's difficult on both sides. Seen him taking notes from the beginning. I see him put his glasses on. He gets very close to the screen when they're reading some of those text messages. So he's paying attention.
Prince went deeper. He described the upstairs private rooms, the setup, the layout, the vibe, and every detail lined up perfectly with what prosecutors had already laid out in their opening statements. You could have heard a pin drop. The entire room was locked in. Even the judge leaned in, eyes locked on the speakers.
Notebooks in their hand. They're coming in. They're very alert. And I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according.
Later, court reporters told me they'd never experienced anything like that moment. It was electric. Then came the part that broke the silence. "I tried talking to him about it," Prince said, his voice heavy. "I told him it had to stop. He just laughed and said I should mind my business if I wanted to keep working in this industry." Right then, the prosecutor hit pause, and the timing, flawless, like a scene from a movie. Everyone turned toward Diddy, his usual calm, gone. His face was pale. His hands, which had been stone still for days, were now trembling. His top lawyer quickly slid a yellow notepad in front of him, trying to shield the jury from his reaction. But it was too late. The moment Prince called him out by name, Diddy's mask shattered. Yeah.
To her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of times.
And the children, as they were exiting court yesterday, 2 of the girls were seen crying. How emotional have they been in court?
Again, I cannot imagine if that was my father or somebody close to me up there and having to hear details of their sex life. Those are young women. They lost their mother, one of them, the twins. So no one can probably quite understand.
What left the room stunned wasn't just what Prince said. It was watching Diddy fall apart right in front of us. For 2 straight days, he was locked in, calm, unreadable, a master of poker face. Even when accusers pointed straight at him or when damaging images flashed on the screens, he just leaned in and calmly whispered to his lawyers. Not once did he flinch, not a crack, until Prince's voice came back. After that brief pause, the recording resumed, and everything changed. Diddy's shift was instant. The cool exterior, gone.
Kim Porter came up today in testimony. What was the significance there?
The defense said early on that this case would be about infidelity, love, and jealousy. And
Cassie Ventura on the witness stand for a 4th day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs's desires. "I'm always ready to free."
The man looked shook. His lead attorney, one of those high-powered defenders with a long list of celebrity clients, reached over, gently touching Diddy's arm to settle him down. That's standard stuff in court.
Ventura sort of contemplated, but did get to this moment where she said, knowing that Combs spent holidays with his family, which meant with Porter, did bother her. And she admitted that. They also pointed out that there was testimony where she talked about being insanely jealous overall as a girlfriend. So, yeah.
We're hearing the judge wants Cassie off the stand tomorrow. Will the prosecution and defense get equal time?
Yeah, as long as there aren't any additional motions, I think that is the goal, to have her off the stand by tomorrow.
Why do you think that? What's the reasoning behind wanting her off the stand tomorrow?
In the very beginning, Rachel, they told us that she would likely be on that stand.
but Diddy snapped his arm away, so hard a glass of water tipped and spilled across the table. Jurors turned to each other, wide-eyed. You could see the shift. This was no longer music mogul Diddy. This was a man breaking down under pressure. One courtroom sketch artist later told reporters she'd never seen someone's body language change so fast during live testimony. His breathing, heavy, loud. Even folks in the back row could see his chest rising like he was running out of air.
Notebooks in their hand. They're coming in, they're very alert, and I think this is one of those testimonies where you have no choice but to pay attention and almost be flabbergasted, obviously, at some of what you're hearing, because it's not only just insight into somebody's sex life, but the details are disturbing at times, especially during that prosecution testimony when we saw some of the alleged abuse, or we saw pictures of her after a beating of some kind, according to her. But the jurors are definitely paying attention. I don't see anyone that's not keeping their focus on Cassie Ventura, and also I noticed them taking notes a lot of.
His eyes darted all over the place, scanning the room like he was looking for a way out. And the judge? He didn't blink once. He watched Diddy the entire time. A seasoned judge, someone who's seen it all, clearly recognized what was happening. Diddy was unraveling. He kept shifting in his seat, fingers trembling as he loosened his tie. Then he leaned in, whispering something fast to his lawyers. Within seconds, 3 of them leaned in close. Meanwhile, Prince's voice rolled on, this time detailing a private gathering in Beverly Hills. Prince dropped a specific date, March 9th, 2016, then followed it with an exact address, the same one prosecutors had already flagged in earlier evidence. But the second those numbers left Prince's lips, Diddy snapped. He didn't ease out of his chair. He jumped up like someone yanked him with invisible wires. Immediately, 4 security officers closed in on the defense table. Diddy's legal team jumped into action, grabbing at his jacket, trying to pull him back down. Their faces said it all, pure panic. One lawyer leaned in, whispering fast, while another moved to block the jury's view, placing himself between them and Diddy like a human shield. But Prince's recording kept going, calm, unstoppable. He described walking into a room that night and seeing things that matched the exact charges laid against Diddy. Diddy's attorneys looked desperate now, scrambling over each other, trying to calm him before things exploded. Too late. "That's a lie!" Diddy suddenly shouted, his voice booming across the room. The entire courtroom jolted. A reporter in the front row literally flinched. He wasn't even there. That never happened. It was chaos. The judge immediately slammed the gavel. "Order! Order in this court!" He locked eyes with Diddy. "Mr. Combs, control yourself, or I will hold you in contempt." And just like that, silence. Except for Prince's voice still rolling calmly through the speakers. That's when it hit everyone. This was the prosecution's trap. They waited for Diddy to get too comfortable, waited until day 3 to drop the one thing guaranteed to break him. And it worked like clockwork. Once the judge slammed things back into order, the prosecution calmly resumed the audio. But what came next? It stunned the entire courtroom. Prince wasn't tossing around vague claims. He came with receipts. He laid out 3 clear, targeted allegations that struck right at the center of the case. Then he dropped a truth bomb that nobody was ready for. "I've been documenting what's really going on in the music industry for years," Prince said. "I keep everything, dates, times, who was there, what happened. I've been doing this since 2007. Legal pros in the room started shifting in their seats, throwing side glances at each other. This wasn't gossip. This was organized evidence from one of the most meticulous legends in music history. The first bombshell? Prince described being at private events hosted by Diddy, but he made it crystal clear these weren't just parties. "They're calculated setups," he said. "I saw him isolate young artists from their crews, pull them into rooms alone, and put them in situations where saying no wasn't really an option." Then he mentioned a Beverly Hills property by address and described a room setup that perfectly matched floor plans already on record. The courtroom went dead silent. Prince's voice carried on, raw and real.
Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in.
They come in thinking this is their shot at fame. But by the time they realize what's happening, they're already trapped. I've seen at least 7 artists go through it, firsthand. Then came the second blow, his personal clash with Diddy. I confronted him at the Grammys after party in 2016, Prince said. Told him I knew what was going on, told him it needed to stop. And Diddy's response, cold. He laughed in my face, Prince said. Told me, you might be Prince, but you're not untouchable. Prince didn't even have to say it. That was a threat. Diddy's legal team was in full panic mode, furiously scribbling notes, whispering across the table. You could tell they were blindsided, but it got even worse. Prince began naming numbers, serious numbers. He talked about hush payments, $2 million to one person, $1.3 million to another. And those weren't just claims. They matched financial records the prosecution had already shown earlier in the trial. I've seen the payments, Prince said. I've seen the ND as they signed. Then he dropped the line that cut through the courtroom like a blade. This isn't just rich people behaving badly. It's systematic. It's calculated. His knowledge was too sharp, too detailed. This wasn't a guess. It was insider access, the kind only someone deep in the industry would ever know. As the recording went on, Prince's voice started to shift, slower, heavier. I'm making this because I'm scared to go public, he admitted. The power structure in this business protects people like him. No one wants to believe what really happens behind those doors. Then came the final words, words that froze the entire room. If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the right people. This isn't just about protecting myself. It's about protecting the ones who can't speak. And then, silence. No music, no fade out. Just gone. The courtroom didn't move. No one whispered. No one even breathed too loud. The prosecution had just pulled off something unheard of. They turned Prince into the star witness from beyond the grave. The lead prosecutor stood up, calm as ever. No further questions, Your Honor. And that was it. She didn't need to add a single word. Prince had just done what no one else could, exposed everything, without fear. And in just 7 seconds, Diddy's Outburst had flipped this trial on its head. The second Prince's recording cut off, Diddy's legal team snapped into full-blown crisis mode. His lead attorney shot up like a rocket, voice slightly shaky as he addressed the judge. Your Honor, we request a 15-minute recess to consult with our client. Everyone in the room could hear the desperation. It was obvious. The judge didn't blink. Request denied, he said coldly. We will continue with the evidence presentation. Then came the stare, sharp, director, right at Diddy. And I expect no further disruptions. Diddy's lawyers looked stunned, like someone had slapped the wind out of them. These were top-dollar attorneys charging $1,000 an hour, and they were not used to being told no. But today, the courtroom wasn't theirs. Meanwhile, the prosecution, they didn't gloat, but you could feel the win. The lead prosecutor stayed buttoned up and professional, but her second chair couldn't help cracking a slight smile. When Diddy blew up earlier, they'd exchanged a split-second glance. That look said it all. The plan worked. They had baited that reaction, wanted it on the record, and now it was locked into court history. A legal analyst a few seats behind me whispered to his colleague, "That was devastating for the defense. They spent 2 days painting him as calm and composed. That image just went up in smoke." The judge then turned to the jury. You are instructed to disregard the outburst. Emotional reactions are not evidence. Yeah, but every trial lawyer knows the truth. Once a jury sees something like that, it sticks. 3 jurors were now locked in on Diddy, watching his every twitch. And security, they weren't playing anymore. 4 officers didn't move from his side, not for a second. After Diddy's explosive outburst, security locked in even tighter. 2 more officers took position, one standing just feet from the defense table. Another was posted directly behind Diddy's chair, close enough to grab him if things went sideways again. From there, the day only got worse. The prosecution rolled out more receipts, evidence that tied directly to what Prince said in the recording. Bank records showing the exact hush money amounts Prince mentioned displayed. Text messages from witnesses describing those same shady parties. On the big screen, it was all stacking up, and Diddy was crumbling right in front of everyone. He sat there drenched in sweat, his designer suit clinging to him. His hands were shaking so badly that his attorney quietly slid him a legal pad, maybe to give him something to grip, maybe to hide the tremble. Even when a courtroom assistant offered him water, he waved it off. By the afternoon break, his face said it all. The flashy confidence was gone. He looked like a man boxed into a corner with no exit. And then came the last blow of the day. Diddy's team filed an emergency motion to toss out Prince's recording, claiming it might have been manipulated and couldn't be properly authenticated because the source was no longer alive. But everyone in that courtroom saw it for what it was, pure damage control. Legal experts nearby immediately called it out, a last-ditch Hail Mary to undo something that was already etched into courtroom history. Emergency motions like that? You only pull them when you've got nothing left. As people filed out, legal analysts were already talking. This, one high-profile legal commentator whispered to a producer, is the moment people will point to as the beginning of the end. Diddy didn't just look guilty, he looked exposed. The shift was undeniable. He went from a man claiming to fight false accusations to someone completely unraveling when the truth came crashing down. One veteran court reporter nailed it. I've covered hundreds of celebrity trials, and I've never seen a case fall apart this fast. And here's the kicker. This wasn't some lucky break for the prosecution. Playing Prince's recording on day 3, that was strategic warfare. Court insiders later confirmed the truth. The prosecution had this nuke ready from day 1. They just waited, watching Diddy get comfortable. A source close to the team told me straight up, the first 2 days were designed to make him feel safe, routine, predictable. That was the trap. That's why the early evidence felt like slow build-up. The real heat was locked away until the perfect moment. Behind the scenes, the prosecution had spent months preparing that recording. 3 different audio forensic experts were hired to verify every second. No edits, no manipulation, just raw, authentic truth from Prince himself. They knew Diddy's team would challenge it, so they made it bulletproof. But here's where it gets even colder. They studied Diddy's past courtroom behavior, every previous legal appearance, every facial tic, every meltdown timeline. And they noticed something. Diddy stayed controlled for about 48 hours. After that, the cracks started. So they didn't just hit him with evidence, they timed it psychologically down to the hour when he'd be most likely to lose it. And when that recording played on day 3, it worked exactly as planned. The prosecution didn't just present a case, they engineered it like master architects. First, they built the foundation, locking in witnesses to confirm dates, locations, and basic facts. Then they layered the frame, bank records, text messages, and photos. Every piece carefully placed so that when Prince's voice finally played, the jury had already seen the puzzle. And now, the missing piece clicked into place. This wasn't off the cuff. It was choreographed. A courthouse insider revealed the prosecution rehearsed the rollout of that recording. Over and over, they practiced where to pause, when to glance at Diddy. even coached themselves on holding a stone-cold poker face when the moment exploded, and it did. What made this hit so lethal was simple. Prince became the perfect witness. He couldn't be cross-examined, he couldn't be bullied, he didn't have an agenda to question, he wasn't out for a check or clout. He was gone, but his words were undeniable. And the timing, surgical. Day 3 was no accident. That's when media attention usually dips. Networks often ease off after opening statements, saving energy for the final stretch. But the prosecution flipped the script, dropping the biggest bomb just as coverage might have faded. Now every outlet was back on fire. A seasoned legal analyst explained it best. They weren't just talking to the jury, they were speaking to the public. As court adjourned, the difference between the two sides was crystal clear. Diddy's team packed up in a fog of damage control. Meanwhile, the prosecution, calm, steady, sharing silent glances like a squad that just hit a game winner. Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team looked shattered. Some were whispering urgently into phones, others flipping through law books like they were racing a ticking clock. The vibe had flipped, hard. Just hours earlier, Diddy was the untouchable music mogul fighting to clear his name. Now? He sat there watching his empire collapse, his image destroyed not by a tabloid, not by a rival, but by the voice of Prince, clear as day, speaking truth from the other side. As day 3 came to a close, the courtroom felt different. Something had shifted, permanently. Prince's words weren't wild accusations. They were specific, undeniable, and impossible to shut down. He did what years of lawsuits and headlines couldn't. He cracked Diddy's mask, right there, in front of the world. And while court picks back up tomorrow, let's be real, the game has already changed. Prince's voice hit harder than any live witness ever could, and now everyone's asking the same thing. What else is in that vault? Who else did Prince name? What other recordings are still hidden, waiting to be heard? Industry insiders aren't sleeping tonight, not because of Diddy's breakdown, but because they know this might just be the beginning. If you thought this was wild, trust me, you're going to want to stick around. Like, subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. We're just scratching the surface. See you in the next one.